Okay, thank you very much. Those of you that don't have a seat, please step outside the registration and they will help you find a seat. Thank you.
If everyone could take their seats, we have some folks in the back. If they could take their seats, we're going to get started momentarily. This is going to be a fabulous event. We have some very special guests for you today. How's everyone feeling today? All right. So in just a few minutes, we're going to get started with a wonderful song by Santita Jackson. So hold on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Santita Jackson.
I'd like to dedicate this a cappella song to all of the workers. Our Vice President has represented the common man, and of course we are in these union headquarters, and so I just wanted to share this song with you on behalf of all working people everywhere. Amen? Amen. It must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You were content to let us shine. You always walked one step behind. We were the ones with all the glory, yet workers were always the ones with all the strength. Always a face without a name. I never once heard them complain. Did you ever know that you are our heroes? You're everything we need to be, and we can fly higher than an eagle with you as the wind beneath our wings. It might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I had you all right here in my heart. Oh, I want you to know someone knows the truth, that we would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you are our hero? You're everything we need to be. Yes, and we can fly higher than an eagle. With you as the wind beneath our, with you as the wind beneath our, with you as the wind beneath our wings.
Thank you, Santita. Give her another round of applause. Thank you so very much. It is my honor to be here as I help to MC and host the labor luncheon here for PUSH. First of all, there are a lot of dignitaries here. Well, let me say who I am, first of all. For those of you who don't know me, I'm with WGN News. I do the evening news. I do the 5, the 6, the 9, the 10, people to people, MC, anything else? This fine gentleman over here, Paul Rennie, the general manager here at WGN, wants me to do. So thank you very much.
But I just really want to get up here and talk about, labor's relationship with community and community's relationship with labor. Over the years, we've had strong connections between labor and community. In fact, if you think about labor in this city, labor unions were some of the first community groups that organized the blocks. When each individual block of the city was a gathering place with people that came from different countries, different parts of the world, and they had their houses of worship, their grocery store, and their employer sometimes within that 1 square block area. So it's important to us to renew those relationships because they're important, and we can't do it alone. Labor can't do it alone, and community can't do it alone. Labor is community, community is labor. And one of those important connections we've had here in the city of Chicago over the course of so many years is that with Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. You see, Reverend Jackson has been a part of the labor movement ever since he stood with Dr. King in Memphis, Tennessee, in support of sanitation workers on strike when Dr. King was tragically killed, not just for one union, but for all unions as he stood with those sanitation workers. Reverend Jackson stood with hospital workers organizing here in Chicago in the 1970s, with firefighters fighting for justice and equity in relation to their employment here with the city of Chicago. Reverend Jackson has stood with labor, both working with us locally and nationally. And as many of you know, the labor movement in Chicago is strong. We're vibrant, and we fight like hell. We have a history of job actions, but we've escalated things in the wake of the Chicago Teachers Union strike in 2012. And in the course of my time at the Chicago Federation of Labor, we've seen auto mechanics go on strike for almost 2 months. We've seen construction workers go on strike for weeks at a time. And we saw hotel workers take to the streets for one of the most historic strikes in the history of this city as well. And Reverend Jackson has stood with us through all of that. I can't think of one person in this community who's done more to work with us in the labor movement to lift up people of color and people who work in low-wage jobs than Reverend Jackson. I know, and let me suggest to you this: if any one of you want to question whether Reverend Jackson's got some gas in the tank left, let's go find a building to stand outside of. He'll climb up on that bench, put his fist in the air, and fight for the working people of this city and this country. So I want to thank you, Reverend Jackson, and thank all of you for having me here today. And I'd now like to bring up the Secretary Treasurer for the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 308, my good friend, Deborah Lane.
Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Deborah Lane. I'm from Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 308, the Financial Secretary, Treasurer, and first organizer of our union. I am so glad and so honored that we are here today to celebrate this gathering with labor unions. We move Chicago. That's what we do. We're over the train operators, L train operators in the city of Chicago, and we got our movement mentoring from right here in this house, the house that Karen Lewis built. Reverend Jackson, I want you to know, as transit operators, we really love you. You have always stood in the trenches for us to help us get what was right for us. We're new to the labor union game, but we're here and we're standing proud, and we're going to fight for what's equally ours. Again, as ATU Local 308, we're here to fight, we're here to stand, and we thank you all for welcoming us in.
So I'm back. Well, you know, we have a lot of historic times here in the city, and as you know, we recently elected a new governor after having 4 years of a governor who's trying to destroy the state of Illinois. And J.B. Pritzker today is actually going around the state signing bills regarding capital and other initiatives to help lift the state of Illinois up. But we also had an election here in the city of Chicago. And after what we see as a time where we've looked at decades of disinvestment from of neighborhoods here in the city of Chicago, from decades of people of manufacturing and other resources being robbed from our communities in order for folks to earn a decent wage. We faced this election where we had a number of people running to become the next mayor of the city of Chicago. And I only talk about that because this is a big challenge. You know, one side of this city is bright and shiny, and there's a whole nother part of this city that cries for hope. So we faced a runoff election between two women who I believe had the heart of the city in their heart. And either way that election came out, it was going to be historic because this city elected its first black female mayor, and that was amazing, and that's what this city needed. But let me talk more specifically about our new mayor. Lori Lightfoot was elected mayor of the city of Chicago back in April, took office in May. I served on her transition committee, not merely because we need to have someone from labor sit at the table, but because they wanted our thoughts and our ideas to be there with them and at the forefront. I've had the pleasure of working with Mayor Lightfoot these last few months, and we have a lot of challenges. And it's not our disagreements or our agreements that are going to identify us. It's how we're going to work together to resolve issues. And I can tell you from the first time that I sat down with Lori Lightfoot just about a year ago, I looked in this woman's eyes and I knew that she was a fighter and she was going to fight like hell, not only to become mayor of the city of Chicago, but to fight for the people who live in our neighborhoods, who put their shoes on every day and go to work. So we have big challenges here in the city. And if we're gonna meet them, we're gonna all have to work together. Labor, community, and government. And right now, I couldn't think of a better partner to have in that venture than Lori Lightfoot. So I'd like to now introduce the new mayor of the city of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot.
Somebody's going to have to work on the height of this podium. Thank you all for being here, and Bob, thank you for that very generous and gracious introduction. I am honored to be in your presence. I'm honored to be here, as others have said, in the house that Karen Lewis built, and in the house that Jesse and Stacey Davis Gates and the rest of CTU carry on a tradition of fighting for what's right, and being on the side of working people in this city. I am a product, thank you. I am a product of a working class family. I can't be here without thinking about the tremendous sacrifices that my father made working in a factory and 2 and 3 other jobs to make ends meet, struggling from paycheck to paycheck. I'm here because of the sacrifices that he and my mother made every single day to provide a better life for me and my siblings, to provide us with opportunity. I am here to bring you greetings from the great city of Chicago, the city that organized labor built. So thank you for being here. As this year's theme for the convention outlines, it's been 400 years since the first African reached our nation's shores in chains. It's a legacy older than the nation itself, the arc of which has been more slave than free, and one where the full rights of citizenship had been enjoyed for us only for the last 50 of those years, a mere fraction of that time. Those 400 years have also come to define the fiber of our nation, touching every aspect of our economy, our culture, and our society, and what distinguishes us from the rest of the world. Chicago itself embodies that legacy in all of its forms, good and bad, and both our capacity to overcome it and how we continue to still struggle under its weight, fundamental inequity and injustice. The question for us rests in what this weekend's theme explores. How do we repair the damage done? It's the same question posed when we explore Chicago's own challenges of income and housing segregation, the concentrated violence, the precarious finances for working families, the lack of good-paying jobs in too many of our neighborhoods, the systematic disinvestment we see in neighborhoods like Austin and North Lawndale, compared to the seemingly limitless flow of capital in neighborhoods like Lakeview and the Gold Coast. A recent study by the Urban Institute found that over the past decade, private resources invested an average of $22,476 per household every year in majority white neighborhoods. Meanwhile, in majority black neighborhoods, that same study saw that number shrink to under $5,000. That's it's over a 15,000 differential. These questions of how we repair the damage may take some different forms, but they are drawn from the same sources. As Dr. King said, the tensions are not between race, but between the forces of justice and injustice, between the forces of light and darkness. And they are just as urgent here in Chicago as it is in New York or Los Angeles or Houston or Milwaukee and urban centers all across our nation. And the only question is truly addressed in one way, and that is head on. And I'm mindful of Vice President Biden here in our presence. And what I would say to you and to anyone who aspires to be the President of the United States, we must have a full-scale urban renewal program that deals with the issues of poverty and injustice in our nation. And the only way we can get there is through comprehensive investment, comprehensive, coordinated economic planning, and true access to the basic community building blocks. As the century-old hymn goes, "Pass me not, O gentle Savior, hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling, do not pass me by." This is a hymn that I heard on countless Sundays in churches growing up. And what it means in this time is that we cannot look away from the needs of people in our neighborhoods if we want to grow great, vibrant cities. And in Chicago, if we want to be a truly global city, we need to look south of Roosevelt Road and west of Ashland. This is our challenge, but our opportunity. It is a shared mission and a shared mandate that we have to charge directly into. The excuses, whatever they may be, we have to put them aside and face our moment of reckoning, and that time is now. And I look forward to working with all of you and encouraging the vigorous debate and discussion that we must have, because it's about the heart and soul of who we are going to be, not just as a city or a state, but as a nation. It is time. We must forge ahead. We must grapple in this moment, and we have to do it together, neighbor to neighbor. Thank you very much.
ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Now to the man who started it all. He fought injustice in the South long before he met Dr. King. It was his work and his struggles that caught Dr. King's eyes. He came to Chicago, started Operation Breadbasket, then Operation Push, and now Rainbow Push. 55 years of working towards inequality, working for justice, working for human rights, not just civil rights, but human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the man who is here. And he's going to introduce you to another special person that you're going to talk to tonight. But he started it all. He's why we are here. Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson.
It is such a joy to see you here today, and I'm anxious to bring on our Vice President from Reverend Herring's Church in Delaware. I want to make one slight adjustment because I know when he would have spoken, we were to have a panel of workers. Dr. King's last drive was a poor people's campaign. How do poor people cease to be poor? Organize and collect the bargaining unit. When poor people can organize, to demand wages and benefits. I want the international president of the Painters Union, who is here with us as a very special guest, Kenneth Resmond. Kenneth, please come up for a moment, please. Big hand. Put your hand together. Put your hand together like you really mean it.
Over 50 years ago, a man said something's going on in Memphis. I think something's going on here in Chicago, Illinois. I'm just humbled, Reverend Jackson, that I've been able to be invited here. Chicago Labor Federation, my District Council 14, my business manager, John Spiros, and everybody here in attendance. It's just a great opportunity for me to be here and talk a little bit about what the vision is at the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The International Union of Painters and Allied Trades knows one thing for sure. That thing for sure is that we know, as a building and construction trades union, we can't do it by ourselves. I stand before you as the president of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, and as a person who looks like a lot of people in this room. But I can tell you, I'm the first person that's a general president of a building trades union that looks like some of the folks in this very room. And I say that not as an ego. I'm pretty much of a humble person and kind of don't think of myself as someone who really has a whole lot to say other than what I have to say to my union. But I realize, because I'm the son of a building tradesman. I'm the son of a man who came from the Pacific Theater after World War II and wanted to become a carpenter in that great state of California, that great progressive state of California. He went to the union hall. The union hall said, you got to get a job first before you join the union. He went to some contractors and they said, you got to join the union before you get a job. I think y'all hear me. After doing that and going around the merry-go-round several times, he did meet a contractor that said, yes, I'll try you, I'll hire you. He went to the union hall, Hayward, California, 1947. We don't allow colored folks in this union. He went back to the contractor. Contractor said, you go to that building on 217 Valdez Street in Oakland, California, and you tell that business manager that if he doesn't bring you into the union, he'll have a junction on his bleepity bleep, bleep bleep, before he can say bleak. So he joined his union. He said, I'm in the union, I'm now gonna go to the union meeting. Went to the union meeting, sat on the row. Y'all know what the union hall looks like. Nobody sat on the row with him. Nobody sat on the row behind him. Nobody sat on the row in front of him. And they started with the Rastas jokes. You know what that is. But one thing that I learned from my father, perseverance. That word, perseverance. He hung in there. He became a member of his union. He learned his trade. He became a journeyman. He became the president of his local union, Larry Thomas, and proceeded to work his way, become a businessman, to work and become a superintendent, to work and move his family forward along with his community. That is what fuels me. But to be able to hear folk tell their story, the story that a lot of people don't realize, and I want you to know that when someone tells their story about the challenges that they faced and how they persevered to get to where they are, it's not to critique anybody, but it's to let you know that folk wear and face challenges. And everybody needs to understand that. My union needs to understand that. The building trades needs to understand that. Organized labor needs to understand that. Because when you have these conversations in these days, you have to make sure that it's a true and honest conversation. If you don't, you're selling yourself short. As a leader of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, we run various programs that are inclusive. We have constituency committees. We have an African American worker committee. We have a women's committee. We have a young workers committee. We have a Latino committee. Some of my fellow members say, well, why isn't there a white committee? I said, well, our union's been around for 130 years. And I think the first 125, it was a white committee. I'm just trying to make the point. I'm not saying to critique you. The clock is winding up on me. I got to get off the stage real quick. But I just want to say the IUPAT is a union that works for constituencies. We work for communities. We work for our membership. And our job is to be an asset to organized labor, to be an asset in Chicago, to be an asset in the United States, to be an asset in California in order to advance. That's what we do. That's our commitment, and I won't stand for anything less. Thank you.
First, I want the Vice President's daughter, the granddaughter, come up here. Come up here, granddaughter. Mayor Lightfoot. Madam Mayor. Judge Greg Mathis. George, New York, 1199 New York, George. Across these years, we worked hand in hand on critical projects. Joe Biden opened the trenches trying to make America better. Agreed to agree, agreed to disagree, but always in a civil way. Some of our best mentoring ministers in the world, Reverend Herring, a blind minister from Delaware, invited me there several times to meet Joe. back in the early 70s. The daughter of my classmate is now the congresswoman from Delaware. These years we worked together. I want to express my thanks in a particular way. We had the great breakthrough. Barack Obama became our presidential nominee. Doubts, hostility and fears everywhere. Two sets of rules. You reached out to the man who covered the waterfront. The depth and breadth, trustworthy, became his running mate, and twice stood at our nation higher heights. We thank President Barack Obama for being president, for his choice of running mate, Joe Biden. Joe, in this challenge in labor union meeting, our focus is temporary workers as a working scam. Workers' right to vote is under attack. Right to work laws in the south of our country. People are confusing Obamacare and affordable health care and all that goes with that. You have the stuff that it takes to make America better, and so Joe Biden, please stand and come forward.
Well, I'm here to introduce one of the Bidens who's going to become President of the United States, my granddaughter, Finnegan Biden from Chicago. If anybody makes it, this one will. By the way, I lost a daughter. I have one daughter that survived, and I have 4 granddaughters. And let me tell you, they're incredible. How many of you men and women have a granddaughter out there? And how many of you had a daughter as well? Well, here's the deal. Daughters always are wonderful. Matter of fact, we Irish have an expression. A son's a son till he gets a wife, a daughter's a daughter the rest of her life. But here's the deal. When your daughter is about 12 and a half years old, you put this little butterfly in bed and you kiss her goodnight. Next morning you walk in, there's a snake in the bed. Daddy, drop me at the corner. Daddy, don't wrestle out of my games. Daddy, Daddy. When they all come back between 19 and 21, my granddaughter, Congresswoman, comes in and says, "You're not hydrating enough. I got to take care of you, Dad." She's a social worker with a master's degree. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. Granddaughters not only always love you, but they always like you. Always like you. And by the way, she's in college. We're walking down the campus. She goes, "Can we hold hands, Pop?" Can you daughters imagine saying that to your dad? I love you, kid. And by the way, her mommy's from the South Side. Her other set of grandparents live here in Chicago, and she's a Chicago girl. Anyway, thank you very much for indulging me, Reverend. And always thank you for remembering my son, Bo. He was a friend of yours, and you took care of him, too. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Members of the clergy, Mayor, thank you for the passport into town. I appreciate it. Congresswoman Kelly is a great friend and a great congresswoman, and all the labor leaders here. There's an expression in parts of South Philly, y'all are the ones that brung me to the dance, the African-American community and labor, and I'm not joking. Jesse knows my state very, very well. He knows that when I say I got raised in the black church, he knows I'm not kidding, because before we'd organize, you could go in and sit in Reverend Herring's church and sit there before we go out and try to change things when I was a kid in college and in high school. But look, before I start, I'd like to say something about the debate we had last night. And I heard and I listened to and I respect Senator Harris. But, you know, we all know that 30 seconds to 60 seconds on a campaign debate exchange can't do justice to a lifetime committed to civil rights. I want to be absolutely clear about my record and position on racial justice, including busing. I never, ever opposed voluntary busing. And as a program that Senator Harris participated in, and it made a difference in her life. I did support federal action to address root causes of segregation in our schools and our communities, including taking on the banks and redlining and trying to change the way in which neighborhoods were segregated. I've always been in favor of using federal authority to overcome state-initiated segregation. In fact, I cast a deciding vote in 1974 against an amendment called the Gurney Amendment, which would have banned the right of the federal courts to be able to use busing as a remedy. And you might guess, in the middle of the most extensive busing order in American history in my city, in my state, it wasn't what you'd call the most popular vote in the country at the time. So, Reverend Jackson, we've spent a lot of time working together over the years on a lot of issues that matter. And I know, you know, I fought my heart out to ensure that civil rights and voting rights, equal rights, are enforced everywhere. These rights are not up to the states to decide. They are federal government's duty to decide. It's a constitutional question to protect the civil rights of every single American. And that's always been my position. And so that's why I ran for federal office in the first place. As Reverend Jackson may be one of the few people that knows, my city was the only city after Dr. King was assassinated that was almost burned to the ground, 20% of it. The only city in the United States of America since Reconstruction that was occupied by the National Guard with drawn bayonets on almost every corner for 10 months. I came home from law school that year, and I only had two political heroes, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, and they were both assassinated the year I graduated. And I came home and I had a job with one of the oldest law firms in the state, a prestigious firm. And after 5 months, I decided I couldn't do it, and I ended up leaving and becoming a public defender. When I was elected, one of the first things I did is to go on a committee to try to strengthen the Voting Rights Act. I co-sponsored the Equal Rights Amendment. I supported making the Equity Act in law and make the law of the land today. I voted for the Civil Rights Act of 1990 to ban employment discrimination. I wrote the provision in the law that allows the Attorney General to pursue cases involving, quote, a pattern or practice of conduct by law enforcement officers in violation of federal rights. I wrote that law. And I used that power during the Obama-Biden administration. Our Department of Justice investigated police discrimination and abuse, including Ferguson. By the way, we worked like the devil to make sure that you should not allow police departments to buy excess military vehicles like up-armored Humvees and armored personnel carrier. You don't go into a neighborhood and police going in an up-armored Humvee or a personnel carrier. Our criminal justice reforms as president and vice president reduced the federal population by 38,000 people. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Obama-Biden administration, we commuted more sentences than the president did than the 13 previous presidents combined. We passed a support. And by the way, with all due respect, I say to Chicagoans and everyone, my president gets much too little credit for all that he did. He was one of the great presidents of the United States of America. And I'm tired of hearing about what he didn't do. This man had a backbone like a ramrod. He had a backbone like a ramrod. You want to know what a man or woman's made of? Watch them under incredible pressure. He got elected as we were about to fall off a cliff. We went out and we had to pass an act that was Recovery Act, $800 billion. And guess what? Remember, he stood up on the. He loved in the State of the Union to turn and surprise me. He didn't tell me. He said, and Sheriff Joe's going to enforce the act. Well, thanks a lot, Mr. President. $800 billion. But we did it without less than 2% of waste, fraud, or abuse in that act. But here's what he did. Everything that landed on his desk, I watched him. I watched him. I sat with him every single morning, and I watched him for hundreds of hours in the so-called, the situation was not where Wolf Blitzer lives. The real situation here. I watched him, and I want to tell you, Chicago, you had a great, great man out here, and he's still a great man, and he still has a lot to offer. We're in office, we passed a supportive discipline initiative to start to break the school-to-prison pipeline. Folks, The discussion in this race today shouldn't be about the past. We should be talking about how we can do better, how we can move forward, how we can give every child in America the opportunity for success stories. These aren't somebody else's children. They're our children. They're all our children. Not a joke. They're all our children. And they're the kite strings that lift our national ambitions aloft. We have to make people realize what you all are doing. What you're doing is every single child in America has enormous potential. Every single child has enormous potential. But it means you have to have good schools in every neighborhood. No child's future should be determined by their zip code. That's why I propose tripling funding for Title I schools to eliminate disparities between rich and poor school districts. We're going to increase teachers' pay. We're going to make pre-K absolutely a requirement across the board. Ladies and gentlemen, these teachers, they walk into school every day like my wife. She taught in the public school system, and now she teaches at the community college. She's never stopped teaching, by the way. She's the only second lady I ever know who's had a full-time job teaching 15 credits a semester. I don't know how, by the way, I'm known as Jill Biden's husband, and I'm proud of that. But I earned it. I had asked her 5 times to marry me before she'd do it. I don't know how that happened. Thank you, Lord. Anyway. Well, look, those of you teachers in here, you know, you're expected to teach kids to read, write, add, and subtract. But guess what? Kids come to school with the burdens and problems. We have too few school psychologists. We have too few social workers. We have too few people are in there doing what needs to be done to give kids a chance. And we're going to do that under my proposal. Look, we're going to reinstate the policies pushed during our administration to finish the work of desegregating our schools because we have a national interest in creating diverse school bodies. That's what I believe. We have to make sure that we're moving closer to the idea of America's founding. You know, we all learn in school, we hold these truths self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. Are we the people? We've never lived up to that. We've never lived up to that. And this is the 400th anniversary of the first African-American being brought to the shores of the United States enslaved. That's the original sin of this nation. But we've never walked away from it either. We've never walked away from the expectation. All of you in this room have never walked away from it. And look, there's only one president I know that's actually deliberately walked away from it, and that is Donald Trump. Not a joke. Think about this. I don't know about you, Jess, but I never thought that after all the progress had been made, I'd see people marching out of fields carrying torches, contorted faces, anger and hate, accompanied by white supremacists of the Ku Klux Klan, met by decent, honorable people who said, we don't hate here. And what happened? Clash ensued, a young woman died. And what did he say? When asked about it, he said, quote, no president's ever said this. There are very fine people in both groups. He has yet to apologize or criticize the Ku Klux Klan or the white supremacists. Look, we have a president who promotes hate and division, has encouraged the poison of white supremacy. Our children are watching. Barack was a president our kids not only could, but did look up to. Look, what presidents say matters. It matters. And by the way, when we stay silent, our silence is complicity. That's what I learned from my dad. Your silence is complicity. You know, I promise you, if I get elected president, I will be a president who stands against racism, the forces of inclusion and intolerance everywhere in our society, in our institutions, in our voting booths, and in our hearts. It matters what we say. And since we're at a labor luncheon, it's important to stand by and start by recognizing Black, Hispanic, Asian American workers and Native American workers and the communities of color all across the nation that have driven and strengthened the labor movement from its beginnings, as you spoke about, Mr. President, a moment ago. From the Atlanta washroom strike in washerwoman strike in 1880, to the Delano grape strike and boycott in 1990, in the 1960s, from Bill Lucy and Bayard Rustin, Chicago's own Abby White and Jacqueline Vaughn. Black and brown power have always been an integral part of fighting for the right to organize, demanding equal pay, fair treatment, basic workers' protection, as my dad would say, some dignity. Taking on the fight of all workers, from farm workers to domestic workers, to tearing down systematic racism along the way. We owe them. We owe them big. We owe you. And if I'm elected president, I want you to know Labor will have an absolute full partner in the White House, and I think Labor knows that from me. Folks, a lot's changed very badly since we're out of office here. And this president and some members of the corporate community believe that, I want to make it clear to them, Wall Street did not build America. Stockbrokers and hedge fund managers did not build this country. You built this country. The great American middle class. The unions built the middle class. That's why it exists. And we need to rebuild it. But this time we have to bring everybody along, no matter their race, their gender, their ethnicity, their religion, who they love, where they live, or whether they have a disability. You know, my dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. And he meant it when he had to leave Scranton to go find work. He said, Joey, it's about your dignity. It's about respecting the community. It's about being able to look your child in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. Too few people, has been referenced today, too few people think they can say that anymore. A vast majority, for the first time in about 80 years, the vast majority of middle-class people are shrinking. They no longer believe their children will have the responsibility. Mr. President, you talked about how your dad persisted and changed things. They don't think they're, and today's corporate culture and this administration, they don't care about your dignity. Instead of investing back into our workers and record profits, instead of investing back in research and development to create more opportunities, corporate profits are going to pay dividends to shareholders and blockbuster executive compensation. Ladies and gentlemen, they're squeezing the life out of workers today. And by the way, and making it harder to meet very basic needs, stripping you of your personal dignity along the way. You know, there's long been a war on labor unions. And as pointed out today, Mr. Chairman, y'all are coming back. But here's the deal. There's been another war going on that hadn't been noticed very much on the ability of individuals to be able to bargain for their self-worth. 40% of workers today have to sign a non-compete agreement. Now, it's one thing you have access to secrets of a great technical organization. You sign, I won't compete. And one thing if you have a business, I'm going to sell it, but I'm not going to open up next door when I sell it to you. But a significant portion of these people are hourly workers. Up until I started hollering about this, if you worked for Jimmy John's, you had to sign a non-compete agreement so you wouldn't walk across town and try to get 10 cents more from McDonald's. What's this all about? It's only one purpose. It's to hold down the ability of individuals even to bargain for their own self-worth. It's to keep wages low. And it's wrong. Too many companies today classify their workers as managers. When labor fought to make sure that if you're an hourly worker, you had to be paid overtime. Well, what do? If you're the person stacking spaghetti cans on top of a shelf in a supermarket, but you control the person who runs the forklift to bring it out, they say you're now a manager. Ladies and gentlemen, it cost more than 4 million hourly workers $1.2 billion last year. And where'd it go? It went back in the pocket of corporate America, back into so-called the job creators. Since when? The auto workers in my state who made all those automobiles that are gone, they're gone now. Since when were they not job creators? Today, the only people, Mr. Chairman, they think are job creators are stockholders. It's ridiculous. And look, speaking of overtime, it is long past time we have a $15 federal minimum wage. Long past time. And folks, no, it really is. And we're getting it done around the country. But folks, we need to build an economy that rewards work, not just wages, not just wealth. Wages have to be rewarded. Wages. You realize that people who are multimillionaires who pay only capital gains, they pay a lower tax rate than any of you all do? Look, if I'm elected president, I will immediately repeal the tax cuts for the super wealthy in this Trump administration. And you know, we have $1.6 trillion in loopholes that exist in the law now. $1.6 trillion. You can't justify the vast majority of that. And so, folks, look, what I'm going to do is use the money to invest in America's future. There's an incredibly long list of policies I don't have time, nor do you have an inclination to listen to me go through. But let me tell you something. We need an inclusive economy. From better access to capital for black-owned small businesses, to reducing the decline in black home ownership, to making sure homes in black communities are valued fairly. You realize the same home, I know you do, same home in a predominantly black neighborhood, the same exact home, and one in an overwhelmingly white neighborhood, in the black neighborhood, it's valued at significantly less, limiting your ability to borrow against it, limiting your ability to do much about it, and guess what? You pay a higher insurance rate too for it, even though it's less. Look, we need to reform the criminal justice system to make sure black mothers feel confident when they send their son out on the street that he's going to be safe. We've got to recognize that kid wearing the hoodie may very well be the next poet laureate and not a gangbanger. Ladies and gentlemen, there are too many black men, and I might add women, in prison. And we started this to have a problem in our administration. We need to pass, I just met with Bobby Scott, you know Bobby well, Congresswoman, just met with Bobby Scott from Virginia, his Safe Justice Act. It needs to be passed, but he acknowledged we need to do more. No more minimum mandatory prison sentences, period. The end of private prisons, as Brock and I talked about. Funding. Original law I wrote, drug courts, at least $400 million a year. Bail reform. No one should be in jail because they don't have the money to pay their bail. No juveniles in adult prisons. Mandatory treatment, not jail, for those who are affected by and struggling with addiction. It makes no sense to put people in jail. Put them in treatment and keep them there while they are going through treatment. Decriminalize marijuana, automatically expunge marijuana convictions. Look, folks, and finally, do what I've been trying to do for 15 years, end the crack powder cocaine disparity so it's 1-to-1, no different. Too many African Americans have been put in jail for it. Look, and prisons, what I don't get, and we just got to make the case, if you make it to ordinary people, they figure it out. In prison, you should receive an education, not how to be a better criminal, but you should learn how to read and write. There should be job programs in there. We should be training people. We should be training them. There should be automatic restoration of their rights once their sentence is served, including all rights to go to school, Pell Grants, not only a right to vote, not only a right to participate, but it's overwhelming the interest of the United States of America and every citizen, black or white or Hispanic, that you re-educate people, give them a chance. Folks, look, we can do all these things and so much more. We have to start by uniting the country. I know I get criticized for saying we can unite the country, but ladies and gentlemen, I refuse to accept the status quo. The status quo of this miserable, ugly politics we have today guarantees we'll continue to do the same. Guarantees it. We can't do it, and we can do it without ever compromising on our principles. You know, I know how the labor leaders movement has moved for decades. That's how we're going to win in 2020. And we're going to win together when we defeat Donald Trump. And folks, Reb, I've never been more optimistic about America's future, and I mean it. I mean it. You know, there's a, excuse me for quoting an Irish poet, my colleagues always kid me. A guy named Seamus Heaney wrote a poem called The Cure of Troy. about the suppression of Catholics in Ireland. He wrote a poem, and he said, "We're taught never to hope on this side of the grave, but then once in a lifetime, that longed-for tidal wave of justice rises up, and hope and history win." Folks, we're in a position now where the American people have seen the very dark side of America. Every generation is saying enough. We have a chance, a real chance. We have a chance if we stand up and remember who we are. This is the United States of America. There's nothing we've not been able to do if we're united in it. You know all those lines everybody remembers from John Kennedy's speeches about going to the moon? He said, this is a challenge we're unwilling. This is a challenge we are willing to accept. But the line I love most, he said, we are unwilling to postpone. We're unwilling to postpone. I am unwilling to postpone any longer to deal with the incredible opportunities we have. So ladies and gentlemen, we have to remember who we are, pick our heads up, work together, and God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you very much.
Vice President Joe Biden. We are not done yet. How many of you are hungry? Reverend Marvin Hunter, if you could come to the stage.